Happy Easter, hope you all had a good break, but let's get down to the important business, which is running a node on the Harmony Open Staking testnet. If you're not running a node, question is, why not? We made it super easy, and thanks to Anchor and 2 months of free cloud hosting, it's also cheap as well. Now that deployment takes less than 5 minutes, and you can check out a video where I do exactly that right here. But more importantly, let's look at one of the key pain points involved in running a node, which is when the network resets. Do you ever drive to work, open your computer, and suddenly see the message we all hate?
Had some obstacles that resulted in a hard reset to SDN. Hard reset, hard reset.
And because we've been testing new code and shipping new code constantly every 24 hours, that's been happening a lot. Now, if you run a node, you will know that this can be a little bit painful.
Ow! That hurt!
Thankfully, we have a solution. Its name is AutoNode. AutoNode. What does that mean?
Autobots, roll out!
Well, it means this, basically. When the network resets, normally what you have to do is a manual reset of your node. You have to go into terminal and reset everything. Not anymore. Thanks to AutoNode, all of that happens by itself. It's magic.
Wow.
It's not just magic, it's also just super convenient and saves you a ton of time. Now, it's called AutoNode, and the person responsible for this is Daniel. Now, I live in Holland, but I'm not actually Dutch. Daniel lives in the US, and he actually is Dutch. So, proper Dutchy in the US, I don't know what that means.
Because you're an idiot.
Oh yeah, that's it.
So here's Daniel on a Zoom chat that happened at the end of the last week, introducing AutoNode. Now, if you want to check out AutoNode and how it works, there's a link in the description below. I did this myself this morning. I think the documentation could use a little bit more work for idiots like me, but there are a few key things in there that you need to be aware of, like editing a JSON file. Just go through it, and if you need help, ask in the Pangea volunteers group. They'll be able to sort you out. But basically, it's super simple, and once you have this thing running, you'll basically just have your node doing what it needs to do in the background, and that's great. That can only be a good thing. So our mission is basically to make everything simpler and faster for everyone so that running a node becomes a thing that even an idiot like me can do. And I did it this morning, so if I can do it, so can you. Check it out. This was Daniel, end of last week. Enjoy.
I'm going to start from the documentation to creating a node and having it validating on OSTN, on Shard0. So to start off, we have to spin up our instance, right? So I'll go ahead and launch a new instance. T3.small should be sufficient. So I'm going to use an Amazon Linux. I'm going to start off with a T3.small. Let's use, I don't know, 30 sounds good. Yeah, that's fine. Launch, that's fine. All right. So this is all the standard process of launching a node on AWS. And we have documentation for that. And I'm sure most people here are familiar with it. So we'll wait for it to spin up. So let's go to the next step. So basically, AutoNode is Docker, right? So what's under it is a Docker image. But effectively, the average person does not need to know that Docker is underlying because the shell script wraps everything. Okay, it's spun up. Let's connect to it. Right. Once we're connected to it, let's go through the steps of installing Docker. Depending on what cloud provider you use, you may have to go through different steps. But here we have documentation for Amazon Linux, which is what I'm using right now, or Ubuntu, which is probably the most common distro of Linux. So just go ahead and install Docker right here. Everything should be copy and paste. We can look up who in his EC2 user. Let me just user mod to EC2 user. Oops. Right. And then we can go ahead and start the service. Cool. SH back in. So after you're done with this step 7, it will kick you out of the SSH instance. That makes you your SSH backend. And then here comes the interesting stuff. We'll go ahead and download the Harmony CLI. And then we'll, with one line, install AutoNode. This will install all the dependency, well, the Docker image really, and kind of that's all you really need, right? And then here's where you would actually create, like, import your keys if you guys have existing keys, or just for demo sakes, I'm gonna create a throwaway account so you guys can take this mnemonic, I guess, and steal funds from it later on. But I'll go ahead and use Faucet account really quick to fund it. Right. Cool. All right. So now that at this point you have your validator key imported to the CLI, we can go ahead and set up the config, right? So we can use nano to set up the config, right? And we'll change this validator address. So here you guys can change a bunch of things, right? You guys can change the name. You guys can change the to run your node, just create a new TMUX session as you do before, and with one command, with one command you can do run a node on shard 1, right? So the command here is AutoNode run, and you want to automatically activate your node. So there was a common issue that I'm sure you guys are familiar with your node not signing enough and you getting kicked out of committee, and you have to manually activate your node import reset your node on hard. That's less auto reset, just means. And shard 1 means you run it on shard 1. Right. So let's go ahead and start it off. It'll automate the entire process. Download the CLI within a Docker image. It'll ask you, do you want to create the validator? Which is enter yes. It'll make sure I have enough funds. And then it'll wait for my node to sync. It'll wait for me to sync with Beacon Chain. It'll wait for me to sync with my shard chain. Cool. All right. So it'll take a while for me to sync. So I guess at this point I can answer any questions if there are any.
Was that a little fast for everyone, or did everyone follow along?
Yeah,
No.
I can definitely.
Yeah. Daniel, maybe it's nice to tell people what's the standard network it's on.
The standard network.
Yeah, it's. I think
I see.
if you don't fill in any endpoints, you are on the OSTN, of course.
Yeah. So currently the settings all default to OSTN because it's the only network you can really do staking stuff on. So if you do want to do like we can default it to different things in the future, but there are options that you guys can do. Actually, we can show you guys in a separate window. Here we go. So you can do like AutoNode run help, right? And this will print you all the help messages, right? How to interact, all the resets, stuff like that. And by default, we're using the staking network, right? For the network option. You can change this to partner network, or you can change this to the stress network. And in the future, you can change that to mainnet. And then you need to also provide the beacon chain endpoint, because that's how you're going to do the staking transactions, right? So you can do that for OSTN. It's this, and I'm sure you guys are familiar with this endpoint. For mainnet, it's T, and so on and so forth. That's the how you set the endpoints. Cool.
AutoNode is saying maybe also tell if is already including downloading a DB snapshot for fast sync.
Yep.
So that it won't sync from scratch.
Yep. So
That
1 second. So it does. AutoNode does sync from DB, from rclone actually. So it does sync shard0 using rclone. That's built into actually node.sh. So right now the underlying shell script is node.sh, but this abstraction allows us to, in the future, move away from node.sh. But for the time being, it does sync using rclone. Cool. Now the benefits of this actually is that we can run a node anywhere. So anything that uses Docker can run a Harmony node, right? So this includes Windows, this includes Mac OS, and this includes Linux. So actually, what I find myself using it a lot when I'm developing is actually running the node on my Mac machine. So I can quickly just, without AWS, just quickly spin up a node, do some interaction with it, and then spin it back down. So actually, we can hop back onto here. And what just happened? Let's scroll back up. What you see here is that it was waiting for a node to sync, and is synced with beacon chain, and is synced with our shard chain. And once the node is synced, it actually sends off a create validator transaction, right? And once it creates a validator, then it'll keep reporting your node's status, right? It'll report your header, which effectively tells you what your current height is. And it will report your current performance once you're elected into committee. All right. There are some interesting things that you can actually do with AutoNode. So say you detach your session, or you have a split plane, which I guess I could detach to, I can use AutoNode, and I can just use info to get my validator's info, right, with one command, right? And in fact, what are all the things that I can do? Just spin up the help message. I can activate my node from AutoNode. Assume I didn't have that option. I can deactivate my node if I want to maintain uptime and I'm doing some sort of maintenance. I can even get my balances. Let's do that. Right. And it'll fetch my validator's balance straight from AutoNode. I can grab my headers from it if I want to. Right. I can export my BLS key if I want to. I can export my passphrase, and these are all like useful things that we can expand on in the future. But the point is that it's an easy way for you to do all the things you would probably want to do as a node runner. And in fact, if you guys have any requests of kind of commands you want easily done, just let me know and I'll add it onto an AutoNode. For those of you that are inclined to contribute to AutoNode, you actually can do that, right? We're all about open source. So it's actually Harmony1 or github.com/harmony1/AutoNode. And all the code is here. And some more kind of in-depth documentation is also here. So you guys can make a PR to it if you guys feel like, kind of adding more to it, think there's some kind of improvements you guys can do, feel free to do it.